On Facebook, it's super easy, right? You see the ad, and usually you're going to click through on the same device. So the attribution there is fairly simplistic. But with TV, you're watching on your screen and you're probably responding on your phone. So you need to build this very strong device graph where you can connect all the data points around to understand who's who. So that's where we use 30 million smart TV devices, 100% IP passback from every streaming publisher. We use a pixel on your site, which ingests over 100 million events every day across all of our clients, right? And through this, we're able to build holdout groups and provide those results on a next day basis. And you can rely on those results to make those intra-campaign decisions. And so again, if you don't have that sufficient tech stack and data, then the metrics you're going to be looking at are not accurate. And therefore, you're going to be making faulty optimizations. That doesn't happen at Tatari.
I want to welcome our listeners to the D2C podcast today. I'm really excited. I've been talking about, for at least the past 6 months or so, I've been talking about this concept of true top of funnel. I've been talking to a lot of brands who are finding success with TV. And today we have the opportunity to go super deep with one of my favorite apparel brands, BYLT, who's seeing some incredible results from TV using Tatari. Why don't we kick it off, Spencer, from BYLT? You're leading growth over there at BYLT. Why don't you just give us a little bit of background about what brought you to your current position, and we'll go from there.
Yep, my name's Spencer, growth marketer over here at BYLT Basics, premium menswear. We just got into women's as well, but really trying to target the go-getter transitional clothing. So think, you go to the gym, you go to work, go to date night, go out for drinks, you should be able to wear the same thing pretty much all day. And my background started off in D2C, learned from some really smart people out in Venice Beach, really scrappy agency. Ended up going over to Cannabis Tech, where I worked in growth, which was a lot of out of home, a lot of CTV, a lot of out of the box ideas. Moved over to the client partner side, revenue, sales engineering side. And then, I got super lucky to land over here at BYLT this past year, just getting back into D2C. And been pushing really hard here on upper funnel.
Very cool. And then Greg, talk to us about your background and how you came to Tatari.
Yeah. Well, let me talk a little about Tatari. I think first, my background maybe isn't quite as interesting, but I lead our client development team here at Tatari. Tatari is a platform for buying and measuring across the whole TV landscape. So think linear streaming and online video. I've been with Tatari for about 6 years. I started out on our client services team, was one of our first people on the team, ran campaigns and have worked with all our biggest companies. I've worked with small disruptor brands, large upfront advertisers, pretty much everything in between, being really hands-on, running their TV campaigns. And so now my role at the company is bringing in new business and helping them kind of see their path onto TV.
Now, BYLT Basics is a brand I've seen just so heavily on Meta for such an aggressive presence on Meta for so long as a male who loves transitional clothing and exercise and going out and such. But what brought you, Spencer, to be like, okay, we got to get onto TV as an apparel brand? What brought you to that conclusion?
Yeah, no, it's a great question, and I'm so blessed to come into an org that has built such a crazy machine on Meta and some of the other channels. But something else I noticed when I got here that just blew my mind was the retention was just so strong. High income male coming back all the time, always buying the next drop. So for us, getting new eyeballs was super important. We had started diversifying a little bit into some other social channels, search, things like that. But to really make the brand legitimate, we wanted to get onto TV, reach mass eyeballs. And our brand and our team in general has just been crushing creative. So we knew it was a perfect place for us to go next.
And you had that retention aspect kind of dialed in. So you kind of had the confidence to know that if you could kind of fill your boat, you'd be able to convert it down the line, especially, right, with such a strong brand and product.
Yeah, exactly. And we have such large sales periods, as most people know. So really just making sure that we can prime that funnel and get as many eyeballs seeing the brand and just being able to target them based on where we want them to see themselves was super important to us.
What was your biggest kind of fear going in? Because I think TV, for whatever reason, I think people feel like they can set up right away on Meta, Google, get your ads running within a couple hours kind of thing. But I feel like for a lot of brands who've kind of mastered social, in their heads, there's a little bit of a roadblock as to getting into TV. So what were your fears about getting into TV before you did? Although I look back at your history, you already had a lot of history with real top of funnel efforts in your previous career. But what were your hesitations or fears going into TV?
Yeah, I think in general, any growth marketer fears not being able to track something that's direct response. We're an e-commerce brand first. So that is the scariest thing, I think, to anybody upstairs, anybody in management, anyone who's been here for a long time, to pull share of wallet away from Meta or direct response channels is scary. But if you do it the right way, you have the right partner and the right tracking set up, it's definitely going to move the needle for you in a big way.
And then just from BYLT's experience too, do you see TV as a fully additive thing? Like when you're looking at your budgets, are you adding more budgets to do TV, or are you moving budgets away from other platforms that may or may not be struggling?
I mean, that's kind of a hard one. I think to start, it's definitely an incremental budget. We don't want to hurt efficiency when something's working really well. We don't want to pull share of wallet away from it just to go prove out TV. I'm not going to break what's going on with Meta. It's more of, dang, we've been making, good cash flow for some time now. We need to reach new eyeballs. We see retention strong. Let's get that incremental budget to start. But then over time, as you're on TV for a while, you're going to have that share of wallet set. And it might, I guess the percentage might be pulled down from some other places, but hopefully we're always scaling budgets across all channels.
Greg, why don't you elaborate a little bit more on why brands decide to get into TV as far when they come to you?
Yeah, we have a lot of these conversations, obviously, and I can just tell you there's a bunch of different reasons. You diversify from other channels. You've got diminishing returns maybe on a particular channel. We see that a lot on Meta. Privacy concerns. I mean, brands even have to worry about a TikTok ban, these days, right? And so one thing I can definitely say is if you're spending around $250K a month on some of these digital channels, it's definitely time for you to come to TV. It's very likely you'll find a cheaper customer to acquire. I've also said, TV can kind of work for anybody. It's the oldest marketing channel, the oldest and most effective, right? There's a new flavor of the month every couple of years when it comes to digital. And it's the most time-tested channel, right? It's always worked. Only now can you measure it as if it's a performance channel, right? And that's always been the goal with Tatari, to make it accessible to everybody and to really democratize that TV space. And so generally we encourage brands to start with like a 4-week test using roughly 10 to 20% of their marketing budget so they can kind of get enough statistical significance and make sure they're actually moving the needle in some form or another and getting enough learnings to turn into scalable channel. But yeah, that's my case for TV, right? It's always worked. It's just a little bit of a different approach than what you might take on Meta or a social channel.
I think most people are aware of the different kinds of TV you can buy, but Greg, just walk us through how people should be thinking about the different categories of how you buy on TV.
Yeah, it's super important when you go into TV to have access to the entire universe of TV viewers, right? That's kind of the point of coming to TV, is to untap that scale and unlock that storytelling, right? And so right now, viewership is sort of split between linear and streaming, right? Everyone's got a different way of consuming content, right? And there's all these different options out there today. But what I can tell you, right, from the viewer's standpoint, they don't sit down and say, well, tonight I'm going to watch linear or tonight I'm going to watch streaming, right? They just kind of go find what program they want to watch wherever it is, right? And so let me give you an example just to kind of tangibly understand what linear streaming online video is, right? Let's take Shark Tank as an example. So Shark Tank, you might watch the first run episode on ABC. It's going to be aired at the same time, and everybody's going to watch at the same time, right? You do that through your cable box or broadcast, whatever you're using for your sort of general TV setup. And then maybe you miss it, right? Maybe you don't catch it in that time slot, so you're going to watch on demand on something like Hulu. That's streaming, right? Or maybe you don't even care about 75% of the episode. You really just want to see one brand's pitch. So you go look it up on YouTube. Well, that's where the online video comes in. And so at Tatari, right, we're really focused on accessing that entire landscape of video, getting on the big screen and being able to measure across all of them to understand which is most effective for you from an acquisition standpoint.
So Spencer, going into it, how much had you done TV advertising before with other brands, or was it new to you with BYLT?
Linear was new to me, but I had done streaming.
Talk a little bit about how you thought about setting up your first campaign. How did it work when you came to Tatari setting up that first campaign?
Yeah, totally. I think linear and streaming was going to be super important for us with that mix, to Greg's point of how consumers aren't really thinking about, do I go on Hulu or do I go on YouTube TV or do I go to YouTube? Like, they know what type of content they want to watch and they're going to find it as quick as possible. And something that I did with linear first was we really just wanted to target a specific audience with a specific creative. And the thing we talked about earlier this week, Eric, was just the Airbnb CMO on how they go after TV, which I just loved this. And this has always stuck with me since I've read about it. But basically, they noticed that their highest LTV and their biggest social moments, everything was when multiple families, whether related or just neighbors, would all go on vacation together and stay in one big house. And just how awesome that trip was. That was a lot of the feedback that they would get back. So what they did was they picked huge moments in sports, not just regular games. They were picking like Super Bowls, NFC championships, NBA playoffs in certain cities. So where people were actually going to be multifamily in a house, maybe having a party, watching a game. And then they would play that commercial of showing the pain point of, damn, we're all in a hotel, but we're in a separate room. We're all going to bed at the end of the night later, like to these separate rooms, but instead we can all be in this one big house, having this great moment. And I just thought that was super powerful. So it's something at BYLT that we've been doing ourselves, at least on linear. And then for streaming, we're going after just straight up performance. So like with the help of Tatari, looking at their cost per acquisition, their cost per unique visitor, with their IP tracking back, it really helps us get deep in the funnel to actually see, is there some directional evidence here that we can compare across platforms? And this has helped a ton as a growth marketer. And then just in general, like all channels, like we're triangulating as much as we can. So that's going to go down into my post-purchase surveys, into our MTA if possible, and then definitely into incrementality as well. So it's all triangulating different things there.
I love that Airbnb example because it's like you think of that kind of specificity with the web, and when you're doing, you can target nurses or whatever if your apparel gets loved by nurses with creatives and everything. But you don't always think about that in the TV space. You think of it more as a broadcast channel. So it's cool to think of the level of targeting that you can achieve with it. What was the level of targeting that you guys set out to aim for with your campaigns?
Yeah, so for linear specifically, we were super lucky to sign Gronk. He actually came to our office. We shot with him for multiple days. The content's really funny. He actually pretends like he's an employee. So like our consumer can try to kind of somewhat put themselves in his shoes, but in a comical way. He tries on a bunch of different products. So we have different cuts we can use across all channels. And then with the help of Tatari, we were kind of diving into like, all right, where is this BYLT guy at? Where are this AOV, this type of income, this gender, and that it all led to sports, right? So Gronk was kind of that perfect fit. And so we started targeting tons of different sports channels with this Gronk creative. And then after we ran that, not only did we see good results in platform with Tatari, but in our post-purchase surveys, we saw a 5 times lift of asking people, have you seen an ambassador from one of our ads? Gronk had 5 times any other ambassador. And then when we drilled down to people that had heard about us through a commercial, that was 8 times. So it was just super awesome to see that we could use someone huge like Gronk, which we were already kind of nervous to use. He's awesome, great athlete. I love him personally, but like obviously saturated as well, but still definitely resonating with the right people on the right channels. So it was really cool to see.
I really want to go to one of Gronk's cruises. I've heard he just runs these insane party cruises. So if you know him, maybe you can get me an invite. But I love that you mentioned post-purchase surveys there because I think that's something we talk about on the podcast a lot. How else, like what other KPIs are you using to measure the success of these campaigns?
Well, yeah, definitely incrementality. So we have our partners over there that we're looking at, and we can see pretty high incrementality. If you just go strictly MTA route, it's really hard with TV, right? It's not like you're going to see with that last click from other things. And if you just went off MTA, you'd definitely be like, oh, TV doesn't work. This isn't good. And then with Tatari as well, with their IP tracking and just their UI in general, I'm able to go in there and see a cost per acquisition from their end, as well as a cost per unique visitor and just cost per view. So those are huge to me. And then one at the top of the funnel that I don't think a lot of people think about, Eric, but just coming from an area where I bought billboards for like a year straight, is CPMs, right? Like at the end of the day, if I can compare a CPM from a commercial to a billboard to Meta to Google, and then I can actually compare those channels to each other, whether it's Peacock to a purchase on PGA, it just really helps me identify what type of value are we getting here. And it's not that I won't pay for an expensive CPM, right? Like if I'm going to get Gronk and it's going to be in a Monday Night Football, yes, I will pay for that expensive CPM if we believe that it's going to get the yield. But at least it's a metric that I think gets overlooked sometimes from D2C companies in TV like definitely still take it into account.
That's interesting. Is it like like because the returns are inherently a little bit longer, or like how do you look at it as a true top of funnel channel, or do you look at it as a direct response channel? And then my question is, do you have like a waterfall of sort of metrics that you're looking at? So like out of the gate, you're looking for a certain thing, and then 2 weeks later, there's another metric that kind of kicks in so that you can kind of gauge throughout the consideration funnel how much it's working?
Yeah, absolutely. So the beginning is going to be that CPM, that cost per visitor, that cost per acquisition, partnering super close with Tatari on that. Post-purchase survey, I'm usually looking at a month to 2 month lag just to see if there's any movement on how'd you hear about us? If TV comes up, see if that needle moved. If they did pick TV, what channels did you see? What streaming platforms were you using? And see if there's any movement there from the dollars we've actually spent in there. And then the ambassadors, right? If we're running a specific ambassador that is recognizable, not just somebody from social media that's more of an influencer type, I'll see if that moved as well. And then we can literally match that back to the dollars. So like, I'll be like, how much did we spend to how much were people saying they recognized us? And are we light in that area or are we heavy? And that goes across all channels as well, Eric, but really helps with TV the most. And then incrementality, of course, that's the one that I think is really important for people to look at, which we've seen good results there over your traditional like MTA, but MTA could work as well.
So that's multi-touch yep. Attribution. What platform would you be using for that? Would be a third party?
Yeah, we use a third party over there, Northbeam. But with that, basically, you're not going to see a ton of value directly from there unless you were to take like, for example, which like this is where it gets hard with the lag. But what you could do is take a correlation graph to organic revenue to your spend on any channel. You can do it with any channel and look at just spend in general from Meta to your organic revenue. And usually those correlations will sit pretty tight if you're a Meta buyer. You go on TV, you might have to look at a lag on that. So it's a little more tricky, but you'll definitely still see a correlation. I think it's a good part of just triangulating everything to see if it's working for you.
Super cool. And then Greg, TV's been around a long time, even streaming's been around a long time, but I feel like the tech stack when it comes to proving incrementality, proving attribution is probably where a lot of the development has come in. Talk a little bit about Tatari's outcomes-focused measurement.
Yeah. So, first of all, I'll just say I think any smart marketer is going to triangulate a bunch of different data sources to figure out what channels are working best and what is happening with my overall business, right? Is this overall mix having the impact that I want it to do? So I first I'll say I fully encourage that. And also we allow you to export all of our raw data into those MTAs and those MMMs so you can run that analysis with your TV data very, very easily. But so I know we kind of went to the Gronk campaign, but just to kind of walk you through, right, how we would think about getting there, right? So we're going to test across all these different channels, right? We're going to say, okay, let's test CNN, let's test ESPN, let's test Hulu, let's test Netflix, right? And let's just see which of those works the best, right? Based on response and conversions. And so early on in your campaign, you're going to be looking at, right, where is those strongest response metrics coming in? And for the BYLT guys, right, that was obviously sports. So we continue to double down there, right? And that's really how this turns into a digital channel because we're able to provide that data on a next day basis and then in turn make those agile optimizations. So every week you should be running an efficient campaign, right? Now, people are going to sell you on that, pitch you on that, right? But to your point, that path and the ability to do that is really only effective if you have the right data and sufficient tech stack, right? So on Facebook, it's super easy, right? You see the ad on Facebook and usually you're going to click through on the same device. So the attribution there is fairly simplistic. But with TV, you're watching on your screen and you're probably responding on your phone. So you need to build this very strong device graph where you can connect all the data points around to understand who's who, right? And so that's where we use 30 million smart TV devices, 100% IP passback from every streaming publisher. We use a pixel on your site, which ingests over 100 million events every day across all of our clients, right? And through this, we're able to build holdout groups and provide those results on a next day basis. And you can rely on those results to make those intra-campaign decisions saying, okay, Pluto is driving a stronger or a more efficient incremental acquisition than Hulu is, right? And then you're allocating budget away from Hulu into Pluto or into sports in BYLT's case. And so again, if you don't have that sufficient tech stack and data, then the metrics you're going to be looking at are not accurate. And therefore you're going to be making faulty optimizations And you're going to reach this point in your TV campaign where you start to turn up the spend levers, and you're like, well, wait a second, nothing's really happening here. That doesn't happen at Tatari because of the tech stack that we leverage and our ability to consistently update what's going on in your baseline on a minute-by-minute basis, so on and so forth.
And I think it's a good point too, because there's a lot of brands listening that might be like, oh, I can't get Gronk if Gronk's the secret weapon. But what you're talking about is what builds to that. You basically, so when you were starting those campaigns, you were using, other creative, product-focused creative stuff that had worked from socials. And then from there, through the data, you see where it's working. Oh my God, it's working with sports, it's working with men, it's working with this. And then it makes your ability to invest in something like Gronk on a lot more stable ground because you have all the data that backs that, okay, this is likely going to work.
100% right, yeah.
And everyone loves Gronk, as previously mentioned. Specifically then, Spencer, so you've got your Gronk creative, you've got your brand creative. When you think about linear streaming and web TV, essentially, how are you thinking about structuring that campaign, or how are you thinking about your creative across these channels? Are they the same? Are they different?
I mean, they could definitely be different. I think linear and even streaming these days, they're definitely premium, right? We always go back and forth when you hear do we put a QR code on it? Do we put a code in general? We usually opt against it. I think it's very specific to your brand, but we're just going for just really premium quality ad, and then using stronger CTAs on our paid social channels. But another thing that we did with streaming was we just launched our bio short. Anyone who's listening to this, definitely get bio short. You can use it for literally anything, transitional for swimming, hiking, working out, just going out for the day.
I'm getting one.
Great product. A lot of my friends hit me up and they love it. But one of the things with us and a lot of brands have problems with is just this high SKU count. Any channel, we could start running an ad and we're like, this ad's killing it. And we're just pushing it hard. And our finance inventory guys hit us up and they're like, hey, you've spent way more money on this ad than we're actually selling this specific unit. And we're like, yeah, but the ad itself's making good money. And they'll be like, all right, cool, keep pushing that ad, but let's make another one. So we wanted to use a specific SKU, and our video team and brand team over here, they're awesome. Made an amazing ad, montage, action, sports, adventure with one of our action sports athletes. And then working with Tatari, we were able to target male demo across the Peacocks of the world, Plutos, Hulus, and really push that ad. And the one thing that we've seen just all around from a business is that from the amount of money we put into that product across channels, we're actually pushing that inventory hard. And one of the main differences was streaming. So we do feel pretty strong about that aspect of it. And I think that's kind of the two different strategies we have right now, pushing specific product drops or working with recognizable brand ambassador and going for just an overall education of the brand.
And you think about that, top of funnel with the Gronk stuff, education about the brand, and then it's much lower mid funnel when you're pushing an actual product, an actual product that resonates with this specific audience. You probably see quicker conversion metrics from something like that.
Yep, exactly. And it was a new product drop, so we felt confident in just getting it out there in front of a lot of our customers.
Very cool. Greg, one of the things we talked about in the pre-interview was this idea of convergent TV. You've got these three major different streams of traffic. Why is it so important to be able to access all of them on one platform?
So I would say the first thing, right, is if you go to someone that's just buying your linear TV or just buying your CTV and they're grading it, right, well, they're naturally going to tell you to buy more CTV or they're going to tell you to buy more linear depending on what their incentive is, right? Whereas we don't really care where you allocate those dollars. We're just going to optimize towards what's efficient for you, right? And our goal with every campaign is to turn into an evergreen channel, right? So you should feel like every dollar you're putting in is netting out in an efficient customer acquisition cost for your overall goal, right? And if we can leverage the entire landscape to do that, right, it's just more advantageous for us. But if you're siloing those two things out, it's going to be really hard to understand which channel is better for you when you're talking about linear, you're talking about streaming, or talking about online video, because A, the measurement's not uniform, and B, you're going to have a partner that's probably upselling you on any one of those particular sets of inventory.
I'm wondering, Spencer, have you measured any? One of the things we love talking about is halo effects of retail and Amazon, things like that. When you're reaching this many new eyeballs on this prestigious, rectangle as the TV is, do you notice sort of halo effects across any of your other marketing efforts?
Yeah, we definitely see downstream lift across other metrics as we're spending more on TV. I think, at some point we launched TV late last year. So at some point, of course, we would do a geo holdout and see if we see that we can actually truly test that halo. But in our gut, we do feel confident that we're seeing those spikes from TV.
Super cool. And then Greg, I guess the other part about convergence is that with all the device mapping, you're taking that user on a journey, no matter what device they're on potentially. So it's like any time you're in a consideration funnel and you see a Facebook ad, and then you maybe see a TV, and the next thing you're screaming, you see another. It just has that effect of being able to follow that sort of like user's thread more carefully, which I would imagine is another reason that it's important that you can access all three of these kinds of inventory on one platform.
Yeah, that's correct. I just want to emphasize too, right? Our focus is on incrementality, right? So if you see a Facebook impression and then a TV ad, we're probably not going to take credit for it because we don't feel like TV is the sole contributor to that conversion, right? And that's really the goal with our measurement is to parse out the incrementality and make sure every impression is the sole driver of a particular conversion that we're attributing back to.
Spencer, when it comes to actually like managing TV as a platform, what does that look like on a day-to-day basis? Are you in the spreadsheets and picking which channels you want to be on, which you don't? Like, what does it actually feel like day-to-day when you're spending significantly on TV?
No, it's a great question. I'm super lucky, obviously, with Tatari. And what we do is manage service. So I have two great reps. Shout out Brandon and Moses. And what we do is we show them all of our reports. So all the stuff we're triangulating, everything that I'm seeing, they're showing us everything they're seeing. We've been obviously working together for a little while now, so they know exactly what we like. They show us the split between streaming and linear. They show us which channels they're going to recommend for us to keep going on, and which streaming platforms we're going to keep going on, which creatives we're seeing better response with. We're always going to push back on each other. It's a great team. Like, we're really lean over here. So we look at all of our partners in general as kind of an extension to the team. And then back to a lot of like the Airbnb style targeting, right? Like, I'm always asking them if I'm like, we know we have a her for him pushing. I'll be like, hey guys, what's up with the season finale of The Bachelor? And they'll be like, okay, this is the cost. I'm like, whoa, that's a big one. What's the age demo? And they tell me, it skews female, this age range. And I'm like, oh, that seems a little bit too expensive, but they're always coming to us with like, hey, we just got this fire sale. Do you guys want this NBA placement? Hey, do you guys want to be in this UFC prelim? And we just find that super valuable to have that team to be able to kind of give us that skeleton of a campaign, and then for us to go in and build, because they really are, they're the experts. They're in there every single day. And I think the UI of everything just feels so native to a growth marketer. It helps us so much more. When I was buying CTV back at Weed Maps, it was almost like I felt like someone faxed it to me, right? Like, it came on like this big clunky paper, like I was buying billboards. But now I have Tatari opened up pretty much all day next to my Meta, my Google, my TikTok. So like, the platforms are all open right next to each other with Tatari there. So I can always go in there, see the media plan all clean. I can have on Slack with them. We meet once a week. Yeah, it's super great.
Very cool. And then Greg, you've also got a full self-serve platform for people that really want to twist the knobs themselves.
So the nice thing about having a lot of data, right, isn't just the measurement, it's the planning side of things. And so a lot of brands, right, they might come to TV and think, well, there's so many inventory options. I don't even know where to start, right? Should I start with linear? Should I start with streaming? Should I start with online video? Should I be buying programmatic? Should I go direct to these publishers? Should I be buying upfront or guaranteed inventory? Can I stick with remnant, right? So all these decisions you have to kind of think about, right? And that's where Tatari's platform is able to aggregate all this different information, right? So we have networks and publishers updating pricing every week into our platform. And then through that smart TV data, we're able to project what the viewership is going to be. And then we have, hundreds of thousands of lines of historical orders that our algorithms will sort through and determine what that optimal bid point is, right? And so that's why Spencer says, oh, we're able to get access to these crazy discounts and fire sales. I'll give you one example. We had like a spot last year during the NBA Finals that I think was 70-80% off, and it drove 20,000 visitors to one of our client sites in a 30-second span, right? So that inventory becomes available, and how do you know what to go after, right? It's all of that data you have in front of you. So we couple that Experian data with the IP level data, understand who's watching what, when. We can look at things like similar inventory at the IP level. So we know if ESPN is working well for BYLT, we can say, okay, well, what are those other IPs or similar IPs? Where else are they watching? Are they watching Hulu, Disney Plus? That's going to inform our next test, right? And so to Spencer's point, you can do this on a managed service basis. You can rely on our team of experts that have a lot of TV experience. But all of this is also, you have the ability to do it on a self-serve basis where you can basically put in your planning metrics, say, I want to target this audience. This is my KPI benchmark. Find me the most effective media to run this. You click the button and we're going to spit out a plan. And oftentimes, right, that algorithm is beating the human media buyer in terms of pricing by like 30 to 70%. So the efficiency gains are tenfold in that sense.
The remnant thing is interesting because I guess with linear TV, it's like a newsletter in a way where when we send a newsletter that doesn't have any ads in it, it gets burned in a way. So you're going to get all of these opportunities for remnant inventory because if it doesn't go out with ads, then it doesn't have ads in it essentially, right?
Yeah, and I think remnant gets this like sort of dirty connotation around it, but it's really just open inventory that the network has, and so the because it's unsold, they have it comes at a discount, right? But you're sitting there as a viewer, you don't know what remnant versus upfront inventory is, right? Your whole goal as the advertiser is to just be in that moment associated with those brands. It's a very powerful thing. You can't mirror on other channels.
What is the barrier to entry with TV at this point? Like for the brands that are listening, we've got a lot of brands in that $1 million to $5 million level. Like what do the brands that have the most success on Tatari, Greg, come to you in terms of budgets to start out?
I think, like I said, about 10 to 20% of your marketing budget is a good place to think about starting a test. Ideally, right, we like to start a brand at $150K over 6 weeks. And so we'll test different networks, each week, the first 4 weeks, and then optimize weeks 5 and 6. But where I see brands get tripped up the most is with creative. They don't know what to run. They feel like it's a high production value or nothing, right? But I think the important thing to do there is just gather learnings as quickly as possible. Go with the social creative, go with the UGC creative, whatever you have available, start to collect where the response is coming in. You can invest more over time. Like I don't think BYLT started with the Gronkowski creative. They probably started something from Facebook, right? And so don't let creative be a barrier. There's a ton of solutions out there. We even have partnerships with AI services that can do something for free. And then, I know I mentioned the 150K number, but we don't really have minimums at Tatari. We try to look at everything on a case-by-case basis and say, what does this brand need to start on TV to really feel like it's a success and to feel confident in the results? So we see brands start as low as 5K a week. You could even start lower if you just want to do retargeting. You can do retargeting on CTV, but that's a long and short of how I'd answer that.
When it comes to meta advertising, a lot of times, we're at Pilot House, we're a performance agency. So there's sometimes a battle on the creative between scrappy creative, like really working well, and like high polished branded creative being more what the brand wants. And it's funny, I was watching the Super Bowl this year and I saw, what was it? It was Kanye or Ye's ad that was just like, go to my website, everything's $20. It was just filmed on his phone. Like we spent all of our money on this spot. We had no money for our creative. What's the status on like scrappy creative or like you say, like UGC lower budget creative on a platform like TV? Is it a good sort of like switch up in a way when you see something that's lower produced on TV, or do you generally want to have something that is produced to the higher standards of TV?
We literally see everything work. So we have tons of brands running UGC creatives. We have tons of brands running very expensive creatives that are high production value. And again, that's my point around two things, right? Don't let creative be a barrier. We see these UGC creatives that just clearly explain the value proposition, who they're going after, right? What their differentiator is. That's the key. Can you do those three things in your creative in 15 to 30 seconds? And a lot of times those creatives can run for a very long time. But the more you can test, right, and actually measure those creatives against each other, the more you're going to understand what's working for you, and also creating scalable options for you, right? So BYLT says they've got different creatives for different products, but you also might want to do a female skewing creative and a male skewing product creative, right? Now you've doubled the amount of media you can spend on TV, or maybe you want to go after an older audience with one of your creatives and a younger audience with one of your creatives. So there's so many different routes you can take. The first thing to do is just get something up and running and get some learnings, understand where your audiences are responding, right? And then you can build something towards those audiences if you need later on, once you've proven out the channel.
One of the biggest issues on social advertising is creative burnout. What does creative burnout feel like on TV? Do creatives tend to have longer legs per impression?
They certainly do. And part of that may just have to do with the sheer reach of the channel, but we see creatives, continue their efficiency, for over a year running on air. I know I could take Calm, for example. I don't know if you guys have seen the Calm ad. It's just raindrops. They've been running it my entire time at Tatari, and it's never been dethroned. They have tried 100 different things. It just goes to show, at least as far as TV goes, I think this idea of creative burnout can be a myth. It more likely means your audience is saturated.
Very cool. And you see the same thing on your buys, Spencer?
Yeah, for sure. I think, to your point, even like thinking of UGC or things like that on TV, I think that is a great pattern disruptor, as I would call it, going onto TV with UGC. But for us, like going back to, we're a premium basics brand. We want the creative to be premium in premium spots. We just want everything just to flow and be cohesive across that. But I do think for some brands, like UGC would be amazing. And even for us, like we're so lucky to have so much data and high creative volume from just an awesome in-house team that even on Meta, like we're testing hooks, we're testing audio hooks, we're testing formats, we're testing different models, we're testing millions of different variables that we're pulling up on our dashboards that we can place these bets with more confidence in.
What would you, as sort of final word, Spencer, what would you say to the brands out there in that like $500,000 to $3 million, $5 million level thinking about getting into TV? What would be your advice?
Definitely just use your best gut on what your brand is and who your audience is. Where do you want them to picture themselves? When do you want them to see your brand? And then also, even though we don't do the QR code and coupon code route as much, there's some crazy stat like 70 to 80% of people nowadays have their phone in their hand while they watch TV. So like there's so much opportunity there. Definitely still think about good hooks, get their attention. A lot of us, even me and my girlfriend, we always will catch each other just like on our phone while we're watching Shogun, like the best part. And one of us will be like, hey, put your phone down. So there's a lot of opportunity to be had. But yeah, just lead with conviction, and they know their brands better than anyone else. So
Greg, I'm glad you brought up the Calm example because that's I often thought of that. If when you go to the movies and you're playing all those commercials before the movies, I always just wanted to buy a commercial and be like, hey, we know you hate the commercials before the movies, so we just made this one 10 seconds in a way. And that's what the Calm app does in a way. It gives you like a 30-second, moment to breathe in, breathe out. It's such a unique sort of activation. And Spencer's alluding to the fact that there is a great opportunity to do these more unique activations with QR codes. Are there any other unique activations that you'd like draw people's attention to kind of inspire them who might be listening?
First of all, we can do the movie thing if anyone's interested. We can buy those slots. I think one thing we didn't talk about that I think is an important strategy to discuss, and maybe it's not exactly what you're alluding to, but is kind of the first thing that popped in my mind is just, and I know this is big for BYLT, but Black Friday, Cyber Monday, right? And how you approach that period. Because on average, our clients see an increase conversion rate by 50%, right? So you're now able to take on more expensive media, and Q4 happens to be this great time on TV where you've got all these live sports, you've got all these show premieres going on, you've got different integrations you can do. You could sponsor Shogun on Hulu if you really wanted to, right? But the important thing is using data to make these decisions, right? So we're not going to ask you to dive right in head first with these big splash opportunities. We're going to prove out along the way. We're going to say, okay, this little spot had a good response rate. Let's move up the next tier, right? Now this sports spot had a good response rate. Okay, we're getting more and more comfortable here, right? And so if you're able to do that going into that Black Friday, Cyber Monday period, it unlocks this huge opportunity to really blow it out and see super efficient performance. And I think that's the biggest thing.
Yeah, and I think, and as you iterate those placements, as Spencer's example, you can iterate the creative as well. Iterative performance is kind of the secret unlock to this space. So it's cool to hear how iterative you can get on TV these days. If anyone's listening and they want to know more about Tatari, you can go to tatari.tv. There'll be a link in the show notes here. Where can our listeners find you guys if they want to reach out and ask other questions?
LinkedIn. Yeah, easily LinkedIn. Spencer Toomey, easiest place to just slide into my DMs. And I'm always down to chat shop. I mean, Eric, thank you a ton for having me on the show, man. It was great to meet you this week, and super fun having this conversation. So anytime on air, off air, definitely hit me up.
Nice. That's awesome. I'm going to get a pair of these shorts too. I'm low on shorts for the summer, so I'm getting a pair of the bio shorts. I think you sold me.
Perfect.
Nice. How about you, Greg?
LinkedIn is probably the best place too. My name's Greg Kalin, and I'm happy to just look through and talk through your business and your marketing strategy, see if TV is a fit, see what might make sense. If any guys want to DM me, and you can also, like you said, visit tatari.tv. I do, again, want to thank you too, Eric and Spencer. It's been a great time chatting with you. I'm a huge BYLT fan. I love their products, so I'll even say you guys should go buy BYLT if you haven't. I'm happy to do this. This is a lot of fun.
Sweet. Thanks, guys. Have a great weekend.
Have a good one, guys.
Thanks so much for listening to today's episode. If you're not a subscriber to our newsletter, you can do that right now at directtoconsumer.co. I'm Eric Dick, and this has been the D2C Podcast. We'll see you next time.